Welcome to the Childcare Genius podcast, proud to be the world's #1 community for brilliant childcare leaders. Each episode will feature interviews with the brightest minds in the childcare industry to guide you into becoming a smarter business leader. Our hosts have opened 10 schools while raising 5 children. They are certified business coaches and are the top-selling childcare business book authors of all time. This episode is sponsored by Elif Childcare Insurance. Give Blake a call at 972-232-2258 to get a free quote on childcare business insurance today. Let's welcome to the Childcare Genius podcast our hosts, Brian and Carol Dupre.
Welcome to episode 56 of the Childcare Genius podcast.
We're your hosts, Brian and Carol Dupre. Before we get started today, I want to give a sincere thank you to you, the listener, for making this one of the most popular childcare podcasts in the world. We're so excited. We know you have a choice in your podcast listenings, and we want to thank you for choosing us. And we're so excited to have you on board, and we hope that we're going to give you great value. And we're going to have a good episode today. So today on our podcast, we have Jason Russell. Jason owns Secure Education Consultants. He's a former Secret Service agent with the U.S. Secret Service. So he knows a little thing about security and building security. Well, anyway, he has a company specializing in helping child care center owners have a safe and stable and secure building. His wife actually is a multi-center owner in Michigan, and that's why I got first interested in security of preschools. So we are going to have a great interview and learn a little bit more about what he can do to help protect you and your schools.
Let's get Jason on the line.
Hi, Jason. Welcome to Childcare Genius podcast. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Excited.
Oh, you bet. We are so excited to have you on board. I've met you before at conferences, and I love what you do, love what your company does. I love it, and I figured I got to get you on as a guest so you can help some of our listeners out there with the security and safety of their childcare centers. And there's nothing more important than the safety of the kids, right?
Absolutely. So I'm excited to be on, and it's a fun mission that we have.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit, like where are you from? Like where do you live?
So I live in Michigan, west side of Michigan, Grand Rapids. So about an hour, west or east of Lake Michigan. So kind of towards the west coast of Michigan. Grew up here in Michigan, went to Western Michigan University. Got a graduate degree from Michigan State University, and been lucky enough to kind of stay in Michigan for my whole life.
Wow, good. Quite the education there. And then I want to hear the backstory of how you got involved in the childcare side. So how about a little background of what you went into? I know you got an impressive resume. So tell us a little bit about what Jason Russell is and how you got involved in working in childcare.
Yeah. So, I started off my career when I finished at Western Michigan. I started off as a police officer in Lansing, Michigan. So Lansing is the capital city of Michigan. Spent about 6 years there. While I was at Lansing, I went back and got a master's degree in security management, and then really applied all over federal law enforcement, and actually had job offers from the Secret Service and the CIA. Chose the Secret Service. So, very much a protection oriented, kind of security oriented organization. So I spent the next portion of my career as a Secret Service agent, really doing protection and investigation. So I was involved in, kind of what people commonly think of the Secret Service, so the presidential protection, but also did a lot of criminal investigations. I was on the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, protective intelligence, so a variety of different things there at the Secret Service. And really during that time is when I met my wife. My wife, Kelly, had just started her first childcare center here in the Grand Rapids area in about 2004, 2005 timeframe, called Milestones, and met her, and we got married. And, during that time she was growing her business. And really, I started to kind of look at what she was doing, look at what safety and security looked like in childcare. And there was the tragedy in at Sandy Hook, really, being younger kids really got me thinking about what are we doing for the littler kids, right? I think it was pretty clear to me that K-12 education had law enforcement involved and had all these resources being put into education. But as we all know, the number of childcares out there that start at 6 weeks, and go up to school age, really wasn't anything being done for those. So my original goal before I even started my company was to find somebody that could help my wife with her childcares. And as I started to research what was out there, like who could come in and do this work in that environment, because as we know, it's so specific, right? The kids are so little, the turnover, all the issues that childcares have, the response is just so unique. And they're obviously, they're not publicly funded for the most part. So private ownership. So the police often don't get involved in those things. And there really wasn't anything out there. There was no security consulting firms that really dealt with childcare. So that's really why I started Secure Education Consultants in 2013. So we've been in business a little over 10 years now. Our original formation was really specifically for childcare. We wanted to really focus in that niche area because there was such a need, right? There really was nobody helping with that. And since then we've grown. We work with childcares, a lot of childcares, hundreds of probably over 1,000 now across the country. A lot of K-12 business, a lot of corporate business as well. So that was kind of the impetus, right? Having to get my family and knowing the unique nature of being a childcare owner, what the concerns are, what the budgets are, what the opportunities are, really to differentiate yourself in the market. And that's one of the things we quickly identified is how big security is as a differentiator in the market for childcares. It's a big thing for parents when they go into a center to see what kind of security they have in place, what the teachers know, and kind of what they've done for safety and security.
Yeah, we've polled our parents, Jason, and security and education are the top two. So, we know how important security is. And that was the last time we polled, probably 15 years ago. And I bet it's probably the top one now for a lot because of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of parents don't ask the questions, right? They don't ask what you're doing. But I think, what we focus on with our clients is really being, forward about security. Here's what we do that's different. Here's what we do to make sure that your kids are safe on a daily basis, whether it's the physical security, the training that you do, all those things are important. The plans that you have in place and the processes, those layers of security really are what are important to keep people safe. So we really kind of empower our clients to be able to express that to their families and make sure that they're doing everything they can do to keep the kids safe on a daily basis.
Excellent. Wow, that's neat.
Can you tell us how SEC works with preschools to train the staff and improve security?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I think, as I said, security is really in layers. So what we usually start with is assessing where they're currently at. So we go into a center and we'll spend a day there talking with the director, talking with staff, talking with the owner about what they currently have in place. And what we're looking at is both physical security and process, procedure, and training, right? So we're looking at kind of that holistic picture, because it's great if you have good physical security in place, but if you don't have the right processes and training to back all that stuff up, it often doesn't really work, right? Or people misuse it or don't understand it. So we start with that assessment, which is really, what do you have in place and where are the gaps and weaknesses? Where are things that could be improved? Maybe you have a good entry, but the person that controls the entry doesn't really ask any questions. They just buzz everybody in the door, right? So instead of it being a good access control point, it's just a really expensive doorbell. So we start with that. Then we really work on finding solutions to fill in any gaps or weaknesses. But we do it in a way that really respects the budget, the culture. We want to make a childcare feel like a childcare. We don't want to make it look like a prison. So when we're putting security in place, we have to be very kind of selective about what we do and how we do it. So we spend a lot of time kind of figuring out solutions for any gaps that kind of fit what's possible within that client's world. Then we kind of shore up any processes, emergency plans, procedures. Childcares don't get nearly as much help when it comes to developing emergency operations plans as a K-12 school. So a lot of times they're still using very old or outdated plans. Not to mention the things that work in a traditional environment don't always work in a childcare because of the age of the kids. When you have babies in cribs and you have toddlers that are not, mobile, it's hard to do some of those emergency responses. And then we kind of wrap everything up with training. I always say in emergency situations, human beings don't rise to the occasion, they sink to the level of their training. So I think the biggest piece of what we do is go in and train staff on how to actually respond to emergencies. I think, truthfully, nobody grabs a book in an emergency and, flips to the page and tries to figure out what to do. They respond based on how they've practiced and what they've been trained to do. Yep. So that's really the final step of our process with a client, is to really train staff on how to actually respond. And then, we always remain engaged with staff to try to help them along the way should they have any issues. In fact, 10 minutes before we got on this podcast, I was just talking to a client that had an incident at a center. So our goal is to really just continue to help our clients make sure that they can keep that a safe environment.
Excellent. Wow, that's neat. And it's so true. The training, I think, is the most important thing, because you're right. Nobody picks up an operations manual when a crisis happens. You have to know what to do. And practice. The more you practice, that's why they practice it at school, right? With intruder drills and things like that. So the teachers know what to do. And with turnover, it probably makes it a whole lot harder when you have teacher turnover.
Yeah, it does. And I think, we quickly identified that and realized that we have to create ways for teachers to train without constantly bringing a person back in. So we developed an e-learning platform so that our centers can really keep up with that training. Even when they have a new employee, they can still get the same training via our E56 platform that allows them to do the training online.
Awesome. Do you have any tips you can give listeners around the world right now that would help to improve the safety and security of their centers?
For childcares, the majority of childcares are so much different than like a high school when it comes to where their threats come from. So when I'm preparing a childcare, I'm usually dealing with threats that are usually external, right? They're coming from outside. It's generally not a kid. It's not somebody within the environment. It's somebody outside. So what we really focus on with childcares is having a really solid perimeter, right? So we try to really focus on entries and making sure that we only let the people in that we want in. So I think controlling your access with a really solid process is important. Discouraging people from allowing piggybacking into their centers where people are opening the doors for other people, and really focusing on keeping that perimeter secure. That's probably the main, physical security issue that I would say childcares have a weakness. So really spending a lot of time focusing on the process of how we control access into our buildings, whether it's using a biometric, a fingerprint scanner. We use facial scanners at some of our centers. That's probably your best opportunity to prevent something from happening, is prevent it from ever coming into the school in the first place. I think that's probably the one area I think centers really should focus on.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a good point, because you're right. The threat does come from outside with childcare. You're not worried about a kid doing something wrong, whereas in high school you are.
Absolutely.
And how should we deal with a potentially unstable non-custodial parent? And at what point should law enforcement be called?
I think, I love the question about law enforcement, because coming from that world, I think people are always apprehensive. They don't want to bother the police, right? They don't want to burden them with something that may be not as serious. But that's really honestly what the police are there for. So when you have those situations where you just don't feel comfortable, there's something that doesn't feel right, or you're concerned, I think you can always contact the police and say, hey, maybe it's nothing, but I would like you to, be on your way here to respond to it in case this thing gets worse or the situation takes a turn. So obviously in a non-custodial parent situation, hopefully you have the paperwork, right? So you know exactly what the arrangements are so that you can have some kind of level of comfort, comfort on what you're supposed to do in terms of when a parent maybe has parenting time or doesn't. A lot of times they don't get the paperwork, from the family. So they're put in a kind of a tough spot. You never want to be in a position where you're making decisions on parenting time. So it really needs to be up to the parents. I always tell people, if you ever have any question, that's what the police are for. Don't hesitate to reach out to law enforcement. You don't always have to call 911. You can call, every police department has a non-emergency number. You can call and say, hey, it's probably nothing, but I would love for an officer to just be in the area in case this situation gets out of hand or in case something happens, so that they're able to be close enough to respond. So my suggestion would be never hesitate to reach out to law enforcement. I mean, that's what they're there to do. They're there to keep the peace. It doesn't always have to be a 911 situation that's a life or death, set of circumstances. And I will tell you, having lived in that world, there's nothing that's going to make a police officer respond faster than trying to protect kids, right? So you're going to get a pretty quick response, and generally you're not going to get an officer who's annoyed when it comes to, hey, I wanted to make sure these babies were safe. Officers are going to be, most of us are parents, right? So we want to protect kids more than anything. So I don't think you should have any apprehension to reach out.
And I'd highly recommend having the non-emergency number listed so you don't have to look it up. Have it ready, have it accessible on the wall. We always have that at our places on the wall. Because you're right, it's not technically an emergency, but it could be. But you don't want to tie up 911 either in a situation like that. So I'm definitely with you there. But you don't want to be looking it up. And when a parent is outside and the voices started getting raised a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know we used to, like, we'd have a code word that sometimes the director is in a situation where the director can't say call the police, but if you had a code word or something where somebody else knows to do that, so that, would you recommend something that similar where somebody can know? That's probably part of what you do anyway, but we have done something similar.
Yeah, I think if you obviously have something, unless it's an imminent danger situation, then you really just need to do what you have to do to get the police responded. I think the one missed opportunity that I probably have seen more in the last, truthfully, since COVID, when it comes to childcare is training staff on de-escalation strategies, right? How do we take a situation, because we know that the parents get upset over a kid gets fed the wrong food and has an allergy reaction, or there's a lot of mistakes that can happen with kids. These, we know this working with centers. But I think the thing that we don't train people on, especially our younger employees that unfortunately we have turnover with, is how do we deal with the situation like that, right? What do we look for non-verbally that somebody might be upset with us, and how do we kind of take control of a conversation and hopefully de-escalate a situation so that it doesn't become worse. So we focus on that. We have de-escalation training that we offer for our clients to really teach people how to de-escalate. And there's really very specific process that you can go through, both verbally and non-verbally, to hopefully take a situation that could become violent or contentious and just reduce the likelihood that it will go in that direction. So that would probably be an area that I think centers should focus on, because communication is mostly what we do, right? But we don't really teach communication. We just expect people to know how to communicate, but a lot of people don't. They need help to understand how can I kind of communicate appropriately.
Right. And especially sometimes you have young directors who sometimes when things get loud to them, they get louder back, just out of natural human thing. And de-escalation is actually talking lower than the other person and calming them down. I understand where you're coming from, but you're right. Something you never think about teaching. And that's a great strategy. And avoid the situation is the best possible outcome, to avoid it in the first place.
Sure.
It can come from an employee too. It doesn't necessarily come from a non-custodial parent. We had a situation where an employee, pushed one of our directors, and that could have gone really bad too. So you never know where the threat could be coming from. It could already be in your building, and you got to know strategies on how to deal with that as well. So lastly, how do you convey to parents, if you start putting together some of your security measures, they work with you. How do you convey to your parents, like, the different things that you have in place without maybe giving away your security secrets?
Yeah, there is a delicate balance there. I think a lot of that comes with their confidence level in you, right? Their confidence level in you as a center and you as a director, as an owner, right? That they've had good experiences with you in the past. So what we generally recommend is they stress to them that we train on emergency response, right? We have emergency procedures in place. Parents don't need to know every single emergency procedure. But we do have them in place, and we practice them regularly. We have physical security measures in place, and some can be overt and some can be covert, right? Overt is generally your cameras and your entry controls. But in our centers, we also have covert emergency or security features in place. We have some special stuff on our glass, and we have some special alert capabilities, and we have other things that we can do that aren't necessarily as visible, right? But they exist. So we try to talk to parents about, look, we don't just say trust us, we know what we're doing. We say, here's the obvious things that you can see. We point to the training. We always reinforce when we go through training every year. We highly recommend all of our clients stress. Hey, last night we went through our critical incident response training. We practiced, especially if you're dealing with, hey, we had a Secret Service agent come in and examine our center and give us tips on ways to improve it and train us on how to respond. That develops a lot of confidence in a parent that, hey, these people they're taking this to another level. And so I think expressing what you are doing is important when it comes to training and planning. And then obviously pointing out the obvious security features that they're going to want to see. And I think, as you said, some parents are going to bring it up. Some parents are going to ask those questions. Some parents don't ask because they might necessarily not want to know. They don't want to think about that, right? So to the extent that you can just make it a part of your tours, when we work with a client and they become SEC certified, we actually provide them with marketing material that goes in their tour packets that shows them, here's the program that this center has been through. They've had their facility assessed by a professional. They've had their staff trained by a professional. They have a security consultant on call, and all those things really play into parents saying, yeah, okay, this is different than the place down the street that, lets everybody in when they knock on the door.
Love that. Jason, if somebody wants to, work with you guys, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so obviously our website, secureed.com. So, secureed.com is where they can come to. And we got a lot of information on there. Actually, a lot of free resources for our clients, for people that visit our website. And then there's a little schedule consultation. You can meet with one of our representatives who will get you on our schedule to kind of talk through what the process looks like. And then it's just a matter of getting on the schedule. We'll come on site, do an on-site assessment, do a training, generally try to perform those in the same trip. So it's a little bit more cost, friendly for the client. And then most of our clients kind of remain clients because, once you've had the assessment done and that initial training, we can do a lot of stuff just virtually via our E56 system. So just reach out to us at secureed.com and happy to come down and help anybody out who can use some assistance.
And I will vouch for you, Jason. I've had several of my clients use you, and I've never heard anything but amazing things. The before and after, and some of the things that you put in place with them were absolutely amazing. So excellent job.
We appreciate that.
So one last mindset question we have for you, because we like to change topics and gears as we leave the call.
What do you like to do to relax and unwind?
I mean, come on, you must be hung pretty tight. I mean, Secret Service guys, you're
Yeah.
usually pretty wound tight. How do you relax, Jason?
I am. I have 3 kids. So my oldest is actually, she's going to be a teacher. So she's starting her student teaching this year. Then I have a high school daughter and a middle school son. Try to spend as much time as I possibly can with them. My wife, obviously, who she has 7 locations of her childcare company now. So we like to spend a lot of time with our family. And then, exercise has always been important to me. So try to get to the gym as much as possible. And that's really how I start my day. I try to start on that. That's an accomplishment to start the day. And it usually sets the tone for the rest of the day and makes it kind of a good day overall. So those are the things that I enjoy to do.
Good strategies.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking your time to help other people here today. I know I got a lot out of it, and I know a lot of our members and listeners got a lot out of it too as well. So secureed.com, we're going to post it in our show notes with a direct link. You'll be able to click right on and see Jason. He'll help your center get secure. Give parents that peace of mind, and it's money well spent, I could promise you.
Thanks, Brian and Carol. Appreciate you guys having me on.
You bet. Thank you, Jason.
He gave us a lot of great ideas.
Yeah, that's excellent. And obviously, when people drop their kids off of your school, security is probably the number one thing that's on their minds. What the kids will learn and how secure they're going to be, especially in light of what's going on in the world today with all the issues, school shootings, things like that. People are thinking, is my daycare secure? And thankfully, we've had a pretty good track record over the years with not too many incidents in childcare, but it doesn't mean that your parents will be any less not worried that something could happen. So he gives some great tips today to help with that. And like I always say, you can never be too careful. And give Jason a call if there's something you want to do to bring his team in and really provide a really good, secure enough. I've had several clients over the years do this with his company and very happy with their results. So if you'd like help in your childcare business, we could help you out any way. Please let us know. Go to childcaregenius.com and under the coaching tab, select like a free coaching call. And I'll get on a call with you, give you some tips, tools, techniques, a couple things that you could take away and help you grow your childcare business. And
this concludes episode 56 of the Childcare Genius podcast. Thank you for taking your time out of your life today to spend with us.
Yeah, just a reminder, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode of our amazing podcast. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Childcare Genius podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. Don't forget to visit our website at childcaregenius.com to see a list of services we offer to help grow your childcare business. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the Childcare Genius community.